everyone, and welcome to Writers, a podcast where professional writers offer tips and advice to other writers. I'm Simon Rose, author of 21 novels and more than 100 non-fiction books for children and young adults.
And I'm Suzanne Lieurance. I'm the author of over 40 published books, and I'm a law of attraction coach for writers. And this time we're going to be chatting about world building and fantasy writing.
And we have a wonderful guest joining us this time to share some of his experiences. Welcome to the show, Konn Lavery.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
That's great. We're thrilled to have you. So before we start, can you tell us a little bit about your writing and what you're currently working on?
Yeah, so I write dark fantasy and horror. Those are kind of the two
Ooh.
that I dabble in, and I've been writing since I was like a little kid, but the first book came out in 2012 as a self-published novel, re-released it in 2017. Since then, I've had a mix of traditional publishing, self-publishing, between short stories, novels. My first novella came out this month, and I'm currently writing the finale to a trilogy that's urban fantasy.
Wow. Cool.
Well, now obviously you are a fantasy writer as such, but as you said, you're also writing in the horror genre. So what's the difference between these two? Obviously there is one. What's the difference in these two types of writing, and which one do you prefer?
Ooh, those are tough. That's a tough one. Yeah, the well, horror is usually more about inducing some sort of negative emotion. Usually you've got fear, you've got dread, you've got a jump scare. It can usually follows different types of tropes, like you got your classics like vampires and zombies and werewolves, but it also can introduce like a demonic component. It can be purely based in the real world, with people doing ugly things. Fantasy, most people tend to think of fantasy as swords and sorcery, and you've got dragons and wizards flying about, but
Right.
fantasy is usually much broader than that. Like I think my favorite fantasy novel of all time is Master and the Margarita, which is that famous Russian novel, actually Soviet novel, that got banned because it really challenged the Soviet Union. But it was basically a fantasy where the devil comes to town and he mucks things up. So it was a lot of fun. But you'd think that might be horror being the devil in town, but it was a lot more comical and had some fantastical components, played off of the Book of Revelations. So horror can blend into fantasy, but fantasy is usually playing off of mythos and symbolism and allowing, yeah, the imagination to fill in a lot of the blanks in that regard.
Wow.
And which I like, yeah, I like writing both, so I don't think I could answer that. I usually blend the two.
Yeah, gosh. You also said you write short stories or something in addition to novels, like you'll do anthologies. Do you prefer that to this longer work, or how do you like, which do you prefer to work on?
Um, I think novels. I think novels. I do enjoy short stories quite a bit because it seems like publishers and readers are more open to experimental formats and storytelling methods, where novels you can experiment, but it's a little more difficult to not only put together but convince people to read.
Mhm. Well, people want to see what they've seen from you before, right? They don't want something
Yeah.
totally different. Yeah, cool.
Now you mentioned that you've been doing this for quite a while, and everything. So what first got you started on it all those years ago?
Well, it actually started when I was a little kid. I was making really terrible board games out of sculpted clay and construction paper to make grids for the boards. And it was kind of like a, yeah, grid-based, almost like chess, but there were more characters with special abilities and all that. And while making these rule books as a kid, I got more into creating backstories for the different teams and the characters. And each character had a complex backstory, and then I started to just forget about the board game component and just started writing. And I've tried other medias as well. Played around with comics because I'm a graphic designer by trade, so drawing comes naturally. But I've also tried animating back in the day in high school, and again, like a lot of those other components of those media types I found was taking away what I really liked, which was telling stories. So I kind of fell into novels naturally.
Wow. Okay, so board games and stuff kind of got you started on the writing journey. What kind of things influence you now?
Um, such a simple, like, a simple answer that everyone says, but like life, like
Yeah,
you can just,
anything and everything, right?
yeah, you look out the window and there's something bizarre that catches your eye, whether it's a bird or a person or a car. Then you open the news, you can open social media, you watch a movie, just constant osmosis with everything. Things I read inspire me, like whether other people do, I'm like, wow, that is really cool, and gets your brain thinking with ideas. And yeah, so basically everything. But I'd say mostly just living in my own experiences. Like for that novella that came out last month, there's a scene in it of a character having to take a small propellered airplane. And last year, I also got to fly a plane for the first time ever, which was super cool. So I managed to work that into it, like really feeling the turbulence and all the different components of flying a plane. So yeah, just I think life experience would be the first of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one of the most important considerations when writing fantasy, of course, is world building, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. I've certainly had to, it's something I've had to consider with some of my novels. What kind of challenges did you face with world building for the writing?
Oh yeah, world building. It's one of my favorite parts of writing, but the biggest challenge is continuity, and that's kind of the whole point of doing world building. So there's no hiccups or plot holes or conflicting pieces of information or timelines. So back when I was making those board games, I always knew I wanted to tell a bunch of stories in one super gigantic universe. And it was always in the back of my head. So, like that first book that came out, Reality, in 2012, it had three sequels. And then I kind of dropped in an Easter egg in 2016 when the third book came out,
Uh,
which hinted to a horror novel that I had written. And that was kind of the thing that started it. And then kept growing from there. And now I actually keep my own little custom Wikipedia on my website. So I keep track of characters, names, locations, major events, and I just have to update it every time, like as I'm reaching the final draft of a new book. I make notes of I gotta update the wiki because these things happened, and some things never show up in a book again, but I just keep a detailed Wikipedia. I think it's something like 60,000 words now.
wow. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot to think about. You've got to be consistent, like you said. Does magic play a large role in your stories?
It plays a like a I'd say like a side character role. It's never been the
Okay.
main component, but it's like that first book, Reality. It has hinted about magic, but it's never really dove into it. And I think that's where I pull in a lot of the horror components is that you don't ever want to reveal too much, like with a complex magic system and breaking down all the rules. It's more about the beyond and the things we can't understand, and it has almost like struck by God type powers on things. So it's always played in the background. Yeah, as a supportive role.
Well, I think to follow on from that about magic, then I'd imagine that fantasy authors get a lot of ideas from mythology and legends and mystical objects and that kind of thing. I was certainly inspired by these types of things when I was creating fantasy stories. In one book, I created a map that appears in the novel, and so readers can follow along when the characters go on this quest, and they can follow along as to where they're going and everything. So, did you get any ideas from sort of mythology and legends and things for the stories?
Yeah, yeah, especially again, yeah, that first novel, which is a mental damnation series. I pulled a lot of influence from Christianity, myth or the Greek mythology, a little bit of Aztec as well. Just understanding how these different religions and tell their stories, and took influence from that mostly. And a lot of, I guess, the magic mostly comes through the character's spirituality. So, um, let's say like a character has a certain power, and they're called words of power. So they speak these words, and it acts more like a chant or a prayer than a
Yeah.
wand or something.
Cool. Gosh. So, what do you take into account when creating characters then? Because that sounds so involved, all the stuff you're doing. I'm just amazed. That sounds like it takes a lot of research before you ever write anything. But then what do you have to do when you're creating the characters? Is it different if they're in a fantasy world rather than in a real world? Or are you trying to create people we can relate to here, but they're in a world we can only imagine?
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is different. When I'm writing a horror, I tend to write them in the modern world at the current times, and
Mhm.
they're regular people going through struggles, and they've got their issues. In the fantasy one, some characters do take on more of a fantastical role where they're larger than life. They're hard to relate to, but usually for the protagonist, I try to bring them down to kind of an average commoner type character. So as they're exploring and getting into these crazy world environments, that the reader can relate, and it's not
Mhm.
just so outlandish. I've got one draft or one manuscript that's not out yet. It's a cosmic horror that does the opposite, where it follows the entity. So
Gosh.
that one was quite difficult. I'm still kind of working it out because it's the entity who's lived for so long, trying to talk to the reader about its own life. Um, Quite different.
Wow. So when you're creating fantasy creatures and stuff, what goes into that? I mean, do you have even a certain amount of you can have so many creatures, so many real life people in a story? How does that kind of work? And where do you get the ideas for these creatures? You've kind of given us a hint of that.
Yeah, yeah, same as the research for the magic and religion in terms of like digging into mythology. I look at where the root words for a lot of these come from, like where did the word vampire come from?
Oh,
What cultures have talked about vampires? What cultures have talked about dragons? And because I didn't really want to do the regular template of um, dwarves and elves and dragons and
yeah.
the Lord of the Rings style stuff. So I wanted to do something different, but those obviously came from somewhere, and usually it comes from old fairy tales or mythology, and breaking down where those words originated from and what they meant, and then yeah, kind of building up things that interest me. So vampires were one because I had read Necroscope, which is a novel from the 80s, and Brian Lumming, I believe his name is. He did a great job of just tearing down the usual standard vampire and built his own mythos, and I found that quite inspiring.
Cool.
I can certainly understand this when it comes to fantasy creatures. I mean, in one of my novels, I created the creatures by combining elements of different animals and
Yeah,
giving them powers or other abilities. I mean, that was a really fun exercise, that's for sure, when I did that.
Hmm. Uh,
yeah, yes, neat. You can just like it's your imagination, so you can get
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
crazy as you want.
so what are you working on right now?
Yeah, the finale to my urban fantasy Ashbourne. So the first one came out in 2023, Crystal Moth Conspiracy.
Okay.
And again, it's all part of the same universe, where like the first book that I wrote reality.
Mm.
There's tie-ins to it, but this book takes place in the modern world. It jumps between Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto, and it basically is about this reporter girl who's on the run from the cops for exposing the corrupt police, but turns out she's unraveling a much larger conspiracy, ultimately related to reptilian people.
Wow.
So, you're doing lots of marketing then for the new books, and well, I suppose you're doing marketing and everything and promotion for all the books, even the ones that are already out there, right?
Yeah, and that's what's kind of fun when you, it's not to downplay traditional publishing because there's pros to that, but with self-publishing, like my first book, I can like run sales all the time. It came out in 2012, and I'm still finding new readers for it because I've got a lot of control of the marketing to do discounts, do freebies,
Mm.
make deals with certain stores and like brick and mortar style, but online marketing as well. So yeah, I'm always marketing in some form or another. And I forget who said it, but like the best advice for marketing was like finish the next book. So that's always been like
Yeah.
ingrained in my head. So whether it's like a short story or a novel, I'm always trying to at least get a couple things out every year because that seems to gather traction to the backlog, and you find new readers if you try a new publisher, and if you put out a new book, it refreshes people's memory. So yeah, I'd say that's mostly where the marketing goes. But yeah, I'll do conventions in person to sign stuff, and then online promotional advertising as well.
God, all that stuff's important, and we'll talk about some of that more in detail in a future podcast. So that's great, Simon.
Well,
Nice.
thanks a lot, Con, for being with us here today.
Yeah.
But before we go,
Mm.
where can people find out about you and everything that you do?
Yeah, they can find me basically online everywhere. Thankfully, my parents gave me a unique name, so I'm easily Googleable. But it's Konn Lavery, KONNLAVERY.com. You can check out all the books. You can subscribe to my newsletter and get some free stories. You can buy the books direct from me if you don't want to go through Amazon or something, but you also can find them on Amazon and Kobo. Print and ebook. I also have some audiobooks and social media.
Wow.
All right. Well, you can find me at simon-rose.com. And Suzanne, I think they can find you online as well.
Yeah, at Right by the Sea, WRITE by the sea.com.
All right.
Yeah.
So, well, we'll be including links and everything in the show notes and everything. But thanks again, Con, for being here today.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. I could just talk to you all day about all this stuff because it's really cool. And I want
That's fun.
listeners or people watching the podcast to know that we'd like to hear from you too. Where do you get your ideas if you're a fantasy writer? What kind of things do you consider when creating your own unique universe? I bet he's given you all kinds of ideas today. If nothing else, you're going to want to go out and look at his books and read his books and see what he's talking about. So how do you create your own characters and creatures, that kind of thing? Let us know, okay?
And if you've enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, share it with other writers who might benefit from all the tips and advice in this conversation.
Yeah. And thanks so much, Con. This was wonderful. So until next time, everybody,
Thanks.
keep writing.
Happy writing, everyone.
Bye.
Bye for now.